I hear them. They are. They really are, I guess, unconsciously racist. How would you describe it?
But I don't know. I think that if you genuinely don't think that you are racist, then you're not. Because
what's happening, everybody? Matt Walsh was interviewed by Piers Morgan on his show, Piers Morgan Uncensored. Matt Walsh and Piers Morgan discussed how pervasive racism is in the United States. Great. Well, it's been a good run, gang. I guess this is where I get canceled. I appreciate all of you, and we all know it was bound to happen sooner or later. Anyway, let's watch Matt Walsh give Piers Morgan a masterclass on the realities of racism in the United States. Let's go.
Not going to allow people to revert to this state of just kind of, treating race in a sort of casual way where it isn't very loaded to them. They don't want to. They don't want to allow that because that means less money and less power for them.
I also think this whole thing of microaggressions that you talk about in the film is really interesting because so many people are aware that they've got to be more careful perhaps in the way they talk and so on and so on. And they try really hard. I'm talking about older generation people perhaps who never had to give this much thought. And they're really keen to try and say the right thing. And these microaggressions, where are you from? Where were you born? Do you speak good English? This was the University of Minnesota. These are all deemed microaggressions. You're Asian, how come you're not good at maths? University of Edinburgh. I don't see colour. National Education Association, because apparently denies a person's of colour's racial, ethnic experiences. I mean, it's all just garbage. Unless it's intended in a derogatory way or a sneering manner, none of those things are aggressive. They're just questions people would ask. I mean, the whole royal family row, for example, about the potential skin colour of Prince Harry's son, Archie, was apparently based around one of the members of the royal family saying, given Meghan Markle's parents, one's white, one's black, what skin colour could the baby be? That's not a microaggression. It's not an aggression of any kind. Unless the question was delivered, I hope it's not going to be too dark. That's a microaggression. That's racism. But to simply say, by the way, given the parents are different colours, what colour might the baby... What's wrong with that? Why wouldn't every family in that position ask that question?
Right. I mean, a lot of this stuff, asking someone where they're from, as you pointed out, is just that's just showing an interest in someone that's being polite.
Right.
But part of this is that it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. They set it up so it's a lose-lose because with many
like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it.
Of these so-called microaggressions, well, the thing, if you do the thing, you're racist, you're microaggressive. But if you don't do it, you could also be racist because, if you don't recognize that someone's from a different culture and you don't acknowledge it at all, well, now you've otherized them, you've excluded them, you've made them feel like they don't exist or something. You haven't affirmed their existence. You haven't taken an interest in their culture. That could also be racist. Really, it just depends on that person. It's like, how do they perceive it? Do they want you to ask or do they not want you to ask? And you're supposed to know that going in.
Right.
And if you do the wrong thing, then it's automatically racist, apparently.
One of the criticisms you've had is this whole concept of unconscious bias and so on, that actually a lot of people who are genuinely racist don't think they're racist. I mean, that is a real phenomenon, right? I know people who say racist stuff who would deny till their cows come home that they're actual racists, but I hear them. They are. They really are, I guess, unconsciously racist. How would you describe it?
But I don't know. I think that if you genuinely don't think that you are racist, then you're not, because that's not in your mind. It's not what's motivating.
But do you think that's right?
There could be people.
See, on that
I think
point,
maybe what you're talking.
I would slightly pick you up on that because I know people who may not think they're racist, but they definitely say stuff that is racist. They're judging people negatively from their skin color.
Well, I think you could have someone who is racist and denies it. That certainly can happen. I mean, there are racist people in the world of all colors, of all races, by the way. Anyone can be racist. And certainly some of them will deny that they are. Like, that is a thing that happens, sure. But the point is that there's only one authority. There's only one person in the universe who's an authority on what's in your mind.
Now, The assumption should be from any of us that someone else isn't racist until they prove themselves differently. Say something, do something. But even then, if they said something quote unquote racist, is that how they meant it? Is that what's in their heart? Maybe this is a person you've known a long time and you all have different perceptions, of what's racist. What's racist is subjective, which is perfect for the left. They love things that people can bitch about without being able to quantify it. So they can keep the race hustlers going, keep people at war with each other. But I'm optimistic on this point. I think people are waking up to their game and how there are powers that be that want us at war with one another. Because if all this racism stuff went away, all this sexism, all these isms went away, and we were all on the same page, united we stand, divided we fall, right? United as a people who our government elected officials work for, we are unstoppable if we're united. But if we're fractured and worried about each other, we're no match for them.
There's only one person who can really speak to that authoritatively, and that is you. And so if you genuinely don't feel any animosity to people based on their race, then you're not racist. You might have you have many other flaws, I'm sure. You might even believe things stereotypically about races, but that's not racist in and of itself. And you're the only one who could speak to that. So if someone tells me they're not racist, then I'll just take them at their word on that. I'm not interested. I can't read their mind, and that's all that we can do. And then I'm just going to go on and live my life. I mean, I think that's the best way to approach most of this.
Do you think America's becoming less racist decade by decade by decade?
I think it was. I think we kind of talk about it in the movie that, in the 90s, and the 90s was not a racial utopia in the United States. I realize that OJ, race riots, that sort of thing did happen. But I will say that just anecdotally, growing up in the 90s, very, very quite diverse area, going to public school and all that, a lot of different races. It was not a major focus. And I think that we're I do think we're going backwards in a lot of ways, that it's now there's a resentment, there's a suspicion there to a much greater degree. 15, 20 years ago. And again, this is all engineered. I think this is all quite intentional.
The George Floyd murder features in the film, obviously. The reaction to that was extraordinary, unprecedented. Could you see good and bad in that reaction?
Hard to see any good in it. I saw a lot of bad. I mean, I saw whole communities being burned down. I saw innocent people being victimized en masse across the country. I saw just people losing it was hysteria. I mean, what we saw was mass hysteria, and the response to that incident was not even close to reasonable. There's not any kind of reasonable conversation about it from the very beginning, and I don't think anything good came of it. And that in and of itself is not responsible alone for a lot of the racial insanity we see today, because a lot of it was already happening. I mean, BLM existed years prior to that, but it certainly didn't help. I think that's for sure.
Well, I want to end by playing the iconic clip from the Martin Luther.
One of my favorite political commentators, Jesse Lee Peterson. Hopefully you all have watched him. If you haven't, check out his channel. He's the best. Jesse Lee Peterson says emphatically, and has said it consistently for decades, he says that racism doesn't exist. He says it's not about skin color. It's a battle between good and evil. Now, in my opinion, if you define racism by judging someone by the color of their skin, racism exists, and it will always exist. But man, as much as some people don't want to believe this, it is such a small minority of our country. If anything, we should just laugh at these people. They're a joke. They don't deserve our energy and time. What Jesse is right about is we are in a battle of good and evil. Racism is evil. So I really like the way Jesse puts it, because I just look at it as another evil in the world. We're human beings. There is always going to be evil all around us. But the vast majority of people are just trying to live their lives and take care of their families, try to make an impact on their community. It's just not something that's on people's mind. Sorry to those who don't agree. It's just the truth. I'm going to wrap up with this. Everyone is a child of God. So whether you want to be or not, you are my brother or sister in Christ. That's all that matters. But I know that won't work for some of you, so I'll try this one. We're all human beings. All of our lives are equally valuable. We all bleed red, and when we're done with these bodies, they're just going to rot and turn into bones. And if that still doesn't work for you, we're all American. And although we go about it in different ways, 99.9999% of us want the same things. And you know what? Life is tough, man. It's a tough world out there. And even though it's relative, depending on the individual, everyone faces challenges. But if I'm being completely honest, there are times that I don't like someone else of a different race. You know why? Because they're an asshole. You know, this reminds me of a quote I heard somewhere. I thought it was really impactful. Maybe you've heard it. I don't know. But it seems like a good way to live. Judge people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I guess the author is unknown. But that's the best advice I can give. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you want a good laugh and you haven't watched it already, yesterday's video was my favorite video I've ever done. Personally, just because I laugh super hard. I've never laughed that hard on camera for sure, and I don't remember last time I laughed that hard in my life. So if you want to get a chuckle, if it sucks, I apologize in advance, but I think you might get a chuckle out of it. Anyway, as always, I really, really appreciate you watching. The end.